starts when you notice walls surrounding everything. Wonder when they got there, but the answer changes nothing. Time you find the strength to say the words out loud. Tell one person as a test, you never tell it to the crowd. And then you cry it out. And then you cry it out. Above all, you gotta hold on to this little thing I tell. There's another chapter coming. There's a way out of the well. You can wait for the ropes to drop. You can wait for the wheel to climb. One of them will always come, given enough time. Nothing stays the same. I swear that on my grave. Your part's tricky, you can never tell what's gonna come. Walls start getting shorter and you start to see the sun. Finally there's a reckoning, this is where you need your friends. It's time to do the work to find out how this chapter ends. And then you cry it out. And then you cry it out. Above all, you gotta hold on to this little thing I tell. There's another chapter coming. There's a way out of the well. You can wait for the ropes to drop. You can wait for the wheel to climb. One of them will always come, given enough time. Nothing stays the same. And I swear that on my grave. Above all, you gotta hold on to this little thing I'll tell. There's another chapter coming. There's a way out of the well. You can wait for the ropes to drop. You can wait for the wheel to climb. One of them will always come, given enough time. Nothing stays the same. Nothing stays the same. Nothing stays the same. I swear that on my grave.
Wow, look at all these people. You guys are here for the music addicted 12-step program today, I believe it is, something like that. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and welcome. My name is Smitty. I'm on the farm board, and you're attempting to be host and moderator today. We've got a great session for you with some awesome music journalists. We feel a underserved subject in our community. And so we hope you learn some things today. I'm going to give you a really quick introduction to each of them. Annie Bacon, you can see on your screen there. She not only is a great musician, lives in Ann Arbor, but she is a card-carrying member of the Grammar Police. So watch what you write. She's also co-coordinator for the Southeast Michigan chapter of the Nashville Songwriters Association. I assume that's Nashville, Tennessee, but could be Nashville, Michigan. I don't know. I'm just figuring this out. Steve Ramm is with us today. He's a top reviewer on Amazon and reviews all kinds of things online. He's a treasurer of the Recorded Sound Collectors and writes a column for collectors of pre-1950s style music. So get your old time stuff together and talk to Steve about that. Michael Kornfeld is here. Not only is he on the board of NERFA, writes for everything from the New York Times and is the editor and publisher of acousticmusicscene.com, but Michael is a resident of the New York City area, the greater New York metropolitan area, but for some reason is a San Francisco Giants fan. I don't get that. I wouldn't have let him in if I had known ahead of time, but so it goes. John Sinkevics. We're really glad to have John here. He launched Local Spins in Grand Rapids in 2012, covers Michigan's music scene. He's a member of the Fair State University's Music and Entertainment Business Advisory Board, and he's president of the Michigan Music Alliances Board, does all kinds of things music as his career and has done it well for a long time. Very excited to have John with us. Now, here's what's going to happen today. We're going to give each of our four folks a chance to introduce themselves properly, besides this garbage I just read you. And that'll be brief. And then they'll each talk a little bit during the second part. When they're talking, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions, put them in the chat, whatever. We will get them answered. And then we'll do some Q&A. And then we'll all go out and get a beer together. My house, come on by. I'm buying. Anyhow, and you need to know, behind the scenes is our lovable and laughable and awesome Annie Capps, who makes this all work. Because if we were counting on me to run the Zoom or do anything like that, it would fail. And none of you'd all be sitting in the waiting room or something wondering what the F is wrong with these farm people. But with Annie Capps behind us, it's all awesome. All right, that's it. We're going to go on my screen. Michael Kornfeld is first up. So Michael, you may go first.
Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here to share with you some information and insights based on my experience as both editor and publisher of acousticmusicscene.com and as someone who's been doing public relations and communications and as strategy and things for many years with a number of artists and indie labels among my clients. For those of you who are not familiar with it, acousticmusicscene.com is my labor of love, which I launched in January of 2007. To be both a resource for the community as well as a way for me to keep myself somewhat in journalism. I was early on in my career a weekly newspaper reporter and an editor, and I wrote for a number of years as a contributing writer for the New York Times. But for the past couple of decades, I've been engaged in public relations and corporate communications. So it's really a way to keep myself doing some journalism and supporting our community. And acousticmusicscene.com has a number of different sections. We have a section, a Celtic Corner, a Bluegrass and Beyond section, write a lot about previewing songwriting competitions and festivals and music conferences, and also write about the winners of some of those songwriting competitions. Occasionally have some interview profile pieces of artists in it. And also I repost the Folk Alliance International monthly folk charts and add some copy, photos, and video usually to that as well. We do not feature reviews of CDs in Acoustic Music Scene because of my involvement with artists in terms of doing their PR. I didn't feel it would be ethical to do that. However, I do want to, during today, I do plan to share some thoughts with you on what makes a great bio and what should be in your EPKs or electronic press and presenter kits. Thanks.
I should have had you pass it off. We're going to pass it to John Sinkevics next.
Great to be part of this amazing panel, distinguished writers and editors. I'm a lifelong journalist, been a newspaper reporter essentially for more than 30 years, especially with the Grand Rapids Press and M Live. Before, of course, things in the newspaper business got a little hairy. I left, or was dismissed, I guess you could say, back in 2012 when I started Local Spins, because I'd been covering the music scene for about a dozen years and realized that there were amazing artists happening here regionally and that the music scene really needed coverage because, frankly, daily newspapers and a lot of publications no longer are covering the arts and no longer covering music. It really is up to us more independent and regional sort of websites to be able to take up that mantle and really do what's necessary to spotlight the music scene. And we are very proud that we're going to be celebrating our 10th anniversary of covering music. And we're going to be celebrating it mid-May here in Grand Rapids with a whole bunch of shows at different venues, including sort of a mini outdoor festival on May 21 at Studio Park in downtown Grand Rapids with a bunch of local and regional bands covering a wide range of genres, everything from folk to rock to hip hop and more. And that's really what I'm designed to do as part of the local spins sort of overseer it, and that is to try to cover as many genres as possible and try to spotlight emerging talent as well as established recording artists and performers who really have suffered over the last couple of years. And I think it's more important than ever for us now to be able to support what's happening out there in live music as well as recorded music. So I'm here to provide, any kind of tips that I can to those out there, artists who are seeking to find ways to sort of promote what they do.
Excellent. Thanks, John. And next is Annie Bacon.
All right. Well, I also am super honored to be in such great company. Thank you so much for having me. So I have a little bit different perspective because I am a performing artist as well. And my pathway into music writing, which I distinguish from journalism because I'm not a trained journalist, I read a lot of music blogs, and there was one in particular in San Francisco where I lived that had a lot of grammar issues, and that's why Smitty said that I reached out to them because it just was painful to read it, and I just said, "Can I help?" And they said, "Yes, please help." And so I started off as an editor for a local blog, and then had kind of worked my way up from there. I was a staff writer at the Bay Bridge, which was a local Bay Area music blog, and have done some contract work as well for Metro Times Detroit, for She Shreds, for KQED in San Francisco. And really my part of the story here to tell is that as a performer, I learned so much about the process of doing press from being on the other side, stuff that I just had no idea what it was actually like. So I have some sort of tips and tricks for those who are running their own press campaigns, ways to know how the process works a little bit. And of course, hopefully, Michael and Steve and John can add if I left anything out. So.
All right, thanks, Annie. And last but certainly not least, Steve Ramm.
Unmute. I knew I'd screw that up. First of all, the room behind me, you'll see I collect antique phonographs. You'll see one back there, and here's a Edison wax cylinder for those that haven't seen it, just briefly, about 1910 or so on. But I also have a bunch of CDs here. But I'm also in my paying life a CPA, and so it's tax season. So what you see behind you is all the stuff laid out pretty much. So I can get all the tax stuff done. I was surprised when I found myself in an odd unique situation, having gone to folk alliances and Americanas and such. I started writing for a number of national rock and roll publications, just articles about early records because I was collecting them back in the 70s. Then I started a monthly column in a magazine called In the Groove, which was for pre-1950 music, starting with the Edison cylinders. I've never missed an issue. That goes back 28 years now. But they were acquired by another magazine called The Antique Phonograph. And even though a lot of the articles in there are about antique phonographs themselves and old 78s, there's a lot of what I call folky people that are out there doing ragtime and other sort of things. So I cover the column there called Anything Phonographic, which is why my name's up there in the top. As I said, I get involved with DJs a lot, but I'm not a DJ. I don't write long, lengthy articles, sort of like John would do. I do CD reviews, and I started maybe 25 years or more ago submitting reviews to Amazon. I'm still writing there. They have a section there where you click if you found the review helpful, and that sort of kicked me up. So I do a lot of those. Been to 20 Americanas, more or less. Same with Folk Alliance. Covering Philly Folk Festival since 1970. And so what my plan is here to talk about from the reviewer standpoint, what the reviewer needs to want to, number one, and then be able to review your CD if you're an artist.
All right, thank you, each of you. We're now going to give each of our eminent panelists an opportunity to talk a little more in depth about the sort of things that they want the rest of us to know about music journalism. And what I'll do is I'll ask John to go first. And I think he provided a sheet that Annie Capps will put in the chat so you can access it on a Google Drive or some such thing. And then John, when you're done, and if there's questions during his talk, raise your hand, put in the chat, whatever, we'll interrupt John if we need to. And when you're done, just pick one of the other three and pass the baton. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I see a lot of veteran sort of names of artists here below. So there are people who already are pretty familiar with how this system works. But on the other hand, I think there's some basic information that all artists need to know when approaching the media, especially since times have changed here over the last few years in terms of social media. The first thing I should say is that as a journalist who's running a website about music, I am inundated with literally hundreds of emails every day from artists from every genre you can imagine, as well as from touring acts who are trying to get information out and trying to sort of promote what they do. Everything from albums that are being released to tours that are being announced. And it is very easy to get lost in the shuffle. I have a pretty specific idea of what it is that Local Spins is doing. We're focusing a lot on regional music and tours that are stopping in the Grand Rapids area or in West Michigan. And therefore, there's a lot of emails that frankly don't necessarily apply. And I'm telling you, I get a lot of emails from younger artists that will say something like, hey, we're in a band, or I'm a indie folk artist and I have a new album. How do I get a story? Well, that's not how you do it. There's a lot of basic information that all of us need as journalists in order to do the work that we do and in order to spotlight your music. So, emails and press releases really should have all the descriptions necessary to your band. They should have links to your photos and to your music, contact information, the things that we need in order for us to decide whether or not we can actually publish a story or be interested in doing an interview with you and following up on this. Same thing for doing album reviews or reviewing a concert. For radio, of course, most of you are pretty familiar that one sheets are incredibly important, but we need to also point out that some people, when they're starting out, really are not very good about providing the information necessary about their albums and whether or not there's language issues, whether or not there's certain tracks that we should be focusing on, the background information that we need about the albums and the tracks. And on top of that, if you're going to be a professional musician and you're going to be a touring artist, it's very important from my perspective to create a website that's professional looking and an updated Facebook page that provides all the information necessary, updated event information, stuff that you are going to be keeping track of very carefully. Because if I go to your website or I go to your Facebook page and that information is dated or isn't accurate, or for instance, has very cute but uninformative information about your band, I'm going to move on because I have plenty of other artists who are going to be providing me the information that I need. In fact, one of the things I pulled out a couple of descriptions on Facebook that I found of bands. I'm not going to mention the artists involved, but this is the kind of thing that we run into every day. And when we're trying to decide whether or not something's important for us to write about, this does not help. So someone described their band this way: more fun than tending the rabbits, a bigger woot than puppies and hay, or a mouse in your pocket. That may be funny, but it does not provide a journalist or an editor the information they need to decide, well, I don't even know what genre this band is involved with or what their music sounds like. I had another one. This one isn't necessarily funny, but it's just as bad in my view. And that is, the only description of this band was music designed to uplift, inspire, and empower. I can tell you that 95% of the bands out there would say that's true about their music. Why not say we're an indie folk band that plays music that's designed to uplift, inspire, empower? That little addition can make a big difference in the way in which we look at the information that we get from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bands and touring artists that we run into every day. And one of the best pieces of advice that I often give to artists is look for other artists who you respect and see how they handle the media, how they handle marketing, and how they handle promotion. If you really like the way that they're doing what they're doing and they're successful at it, don't be afraid to contact them. Most of them are very willing to share with other musicians how they go about contacting the media, how they go about publicizing their music. It's always good to look at the people that are successful in your business and decide how it is that you can reflect that in your own music and in your own approach. It's really about, in my view, it's like every time you approach the media, every time you approach an interview with the media, it's like doing a job interview every time, a mini job interview. That's really what it is. You're trying to put your best foot forward. You need to provide the basic information. And for a website like mine that gets overwhelmed with a lot of information and emails and inquiries from bands, it's very important for you to be able to provide us with the details we need to take that next step. I'll shut down now and let someone else sort of provide a sort of follow-up.
Great. Thank you, John. I think that was informative. I especially love the band descriptions. I want to know that Mouse in the Pocket band because I'm kind of into that. Well, anyhow, we're working together today. How about Steve Ramm? Why don't you talk to us for a little bit next and tell us about anything phonographic?
Okay. So I do not have a website. I have an email and oops, sorry. Yeah, I'm on mute. I do have an email and the notes that I'm going to read sort of off of and they extrapolate from will also be available at the end. And I'll have my email address in case you want to get in touch with me, though most people can find me somewhere. First of all, I want to talk about what a reviewer needs for a CD review. There's two kinds of CDs I get. Some come from publicists, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Some directly come from artists. And I do sometimes just find something and try to contact the person, but I get enough people asking me to do that. So I just want to acknowledge here for those that pretty much know in the folk community, an email came out yesterday that on the 20th of March, after 30 years or something like that, publicist Carrie Baker is decided to retire. He, to me, is one of the top people. I would put him up there with Carrie Estrin, who's, to me, the other god of publicity out there and puts together great packages. And you'll hear some more about her in a minute. So in my case, unlike DJs, I need a physical CD because what I review is from the consumer. I guess I'm still the situation that I figure people buy CDs. I know many of them are sold at the merch table, and that's where some of the artists get most of their money from the venue. Also, I play them on a CD, which is the other end of the house here, on a CD player with a decent stereo. If you saw the speakers that I'm listening to today on my computer, that's not the way I want to hear it. I'm not into downloads. Be also aware that every time you send somebody a download, it ends up on their computer, and maybe they don't like it. Maybe they got 20 of them today, but they have to take them off their computer. So if anything else, at minimum, I'd like people to use SoundStream or something and maybe post a link into that. One sheets were mentioned earlier, and I wanted to just show a couple of samples. I don't know how to take pictures and share screens, so that's it. But this is a typical Carrie Estrin package that came yesterday. CD is by the Canadian band Levant de Nord. Packaging is nice. There is a booklet in here, so there is more text there. It also comes with a one sheet, which summarizes everything. She has the marketing news here. I'm just giving you the idea of the size of this thing. It's folded up, goes into the envelope. And then inside, as I said, there is a booklet with readable liner notes. Talk about that. And then this goes to the reviewers too. On one side, it tells you, whoops, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. On one side, it lists the tracks, and here are comments on each track. Whether they're in the book or not, Carrie provides some kind of commentary for you on that. So if there's no track notes, In there, I would like to have some kind of track notes in the package, and maybe comments on the songs. Lyrics are always appreciated. Sometimes they're in the package, inside the CD and the booklet. Often they are. They're not required, but I try not to go back to the computer, go to the website, find the lyrics, print them out, carry them back to the other room to go through while I'm listening. So if I'm not saying you have to, and somebody once said I was too damning on people, but the more user friendly you are to the reviewer, the better chance your CD is going to get done. I do request them sometimes, or I get an email, please send it. And I always say in there, please include a one sheet. And I'd say about 25% of what I get is a padded envelope of some sort, similar to this, with just the CD in it. No contact, no other information. So somewhere in this package, especially on the one sheet, should be contact information, and with a phone number sometimes too, if the email doesn't go through. Ways to reach out to the reviewers. You have to realize that most active reviewers get literally hundreds. And I have a separate email address that I go to once a week, and there's 500 or 600 in there. Promoting a release. Usually artists and sometimes the agencies, I get on their case too, use something like MailChimp. So you'll get from the same firm 40 different emails that day for lots of genres of the artist and not necessarily the ones the person needs. So specifically, if you're a independent artist, or you're a promoter, or you're a small record label, you can sort of figure out, even if you just send a note to somebody and say, oh, tell me the kind of music you want. And that's what we'll send you. So as I said, I usually go over, if I have time, I scan the emails, and then I just will delete them, because really nobody has all that time. Also, if you send out one of those via a MailChimp or something, don't expect to hear back from most people. You're one of 100 people that day that send an email, and maybe you'll be lucky enough they'll read your email. So my option is somehow very short, very personal. Say, I've got this CD, it does this. You could attach a one sheet even as a PDF. I don't have to print it out. I can just read it, and then say, would you like to hear more of this music? I can send you either a stream or a download, or if you prefer, a physical CD. I'm on Folk Alliance news groups, and I see the cost of postage everybody complains about. Yeah, if it costs $3 to send out the CD, that's a lot of money. But I know people that are sending out hundreds of them to people that didn't ask for them. So once somebody asks for one, I think at that point, you stand a chance of having that person listen to it. Again, when they get it, it may not be something they want. They may not like it, but that's it. Again, I'm different than a lot of people on these panels, especially the folk DJ group and list. I'm not considered a folk DJ because I'm not one, but they're looking for a track. They also need certain things, information and timing and such like that. Reviewers want the whole album. That's what you're selling. I still like to think that people make albums with a concept, whether it's a plan to be a concept or not. It's a group. If again, let's see, I don't want to miss anything here. If a reviewer replies and asks for a physical, they're showing interest. It's worth the postage. Don't ever send a CD with no other information in it. I like to hold the package in the other room in front of my stereo, and I'm assuming other reviewers do too, looking at the photo of the artist, which often is not even on the CD. Now, I just want to finish up here with some comments on packaging. That's been one of my little gripes, I guess. Not gripes. I'm trying to help people, but I'll go to the tables at Folk Alliance and I'll pick up a CD and I'll find what's good and what's bad about it. So all text on that CD should be a font size that a normal person can read from a distance of 12 inches. The contact should be easy on the eyes. tan on brown, or pink on red, make it difficult. Example, which I have here somewhere. Yeah, here's the CD, which I'll talk about in a minute also. This is all the information that's on that CD. There's no booklet. There's nothing else here. I also I had another one here that was brown on red. Very hard to read, very small print. Why put it there? If you can afford a booklet to be inserted, use that for lyrics. Thank yous of thank yous. I've got CDs where there are 4 panels, 1 panel's under the CD, under the clear, and 1 whole panel is nothing but thank yous to, I guess, the supporters. The only people that really want to read those supporters are those supporters, and you probably gave them a copy already. So I'd rather know more about you, and I think the reviewer would also. Let's see. I'm sorry, I had one more thing here. Yeah, the disc needs the name of the artist on the album. DJs feel the same way. Here are some of my favorite items. Here's a band. I don't know the title of the album. Title of the album's on the front. On the CD. Take the CD out, and you get this picture, so it matches this. But I'd have to go around with this closed to find out where the CD goes back. Makes no sense to me at all. Other pieces of bad. It's a group called Fresh Pickles that I got. Okay, that's the full interest. There's no booklet with this. This is the full interest. That's the front. Okay, and it says Fresh Pickles, but I'm assuming that's the title of the album because that's all that's on the CD. Now let's look at some good stuff. This another one, and some of these are bands I really like. This is David Berger and the Sultans of String from Hudistan. Okay, it's a triple thing, and I'm not going to hold it up to read it, but you can see these are liner notes on there. He didn't need a booklet; he couldn't afford to have one, and the CD gives you the track list and everything you need. Really easy to read notes. This was Smithsonian, I think it was. This is the Smithsonian Woody Guthrie album. Liner notes. I can read them. I can read all of. Sorry, I'm just not good to doing this. There we go. Very easy to read. And lastly, a little bit of everything. This is my favorite one that I listened to yesterday. Give a shout out for all the DJs or so on. Noel Paul Stuckey, Peter, Paul, and Mary, just came out. His favorite person in the whole world was Dave Brubeck, which I didn't know until we'd been in touch for the last couple of years. And so he put together a folk and jazz thing together, and it's called Faz Now and Then. And the now are the new songs. There's about 16 of them he did. He gets, trying to remember who the guest artists were on there, but Paul Winter is on there. Somebody else is. And the last 5 digits, or the last 5 tracks, are all from back to 1960, 1965, things that have never been recorded that he thought had a jazz connotation to it when he was with Peter, Paul, and Mary. Here is the front. Here are some pictures. And these are all his comments. Whoops, there we go. Sorry about that, but that's the notes. And this came from Hudson Harding, another PR firm, Eric Balke, sorry. And Eric includes a sheet like this, similar to what Carrie does. There's a summary on the front and track notes on the back. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with people, that the easier you make it on the reviewer, the more thick-skinned you are when you send it out and you don't hear back. And especially if you're sending blasts of mail. And again, I'll even say, especially if you're a single artist, and I have this happen, put a private note in the CD, even if, assuming that the reviewer asked you to send one, a one sheet's fine, but a little note that says, "Hi, Steve, glad this. I'd like you to try these tracks." Though I'm not really looking when you do a CD review, you may mention some tracks, but that's not the reason the person's buying it. It's a whole art project. So
Great.
thanks very much.
Steve. Yeah, appreciate all that information and your time. We're going to throw it to Michael Kornfeld next, but Steve's talk made me think of something, and maybe you want to address this, Michael, or anyone else as we get to it. If someone's writing to you, some artists work with publicists. Are you more likely to notice what comes to you in the email or the snail mail if it comes from a publicist as opposed directly to the artist? That's kind of a question that's out there, and if you want to address that, please do so. Either way, Michael Kornfeld, take it away.
Okay, well, let me address that one quickly. Since I am also a publicist, I will work with artists and with publicists. Doesn't particularly matter. Many artists do not have publicists, either because they can't afford them or because their energies are being focused on other things. So, but either one works for me. Having spoken during my intro a bit about acousticmusicscene.com, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about artist bios and how important they are. I can't stress enough the need for well-written artist bios that are clear, concise, compelling, and creative without being overly clever or cute. A good bio conveys who you are and makes reference to personal experiences as they relate to your songs and your music. Bios convey your musical style and sound and may speak to your creative process, and they help to establish your identity. Bios serve a variety of purposes. Presenters need them as much as the media needs them. Concert presenters are also contacting the media. So you want to have bios that work for each of these audiences and that are customizable. Although there's no ironclad rule on bio length, I generally happen to advise artists to have 3 different versions of their bio of varying lengths, and perhaps even also a one-liner about themselves. Again, there's no ironclad rule in terms of length, but you might think in terms of a 1-paragraph or 50 to 100 word bio, a 2-paragraph bio that expands on your shorter one, and perhaps a lengthier, more narrative style bio as well. As I said, your bios serve different purposes and may be used in different ways, so you want to give people choices. Although well-crafted and well-delivered songs are vital, I believe that a well-written bio that captures people's attention also is critical in making a good first impression and may, in fact, entice people who are not familiar with you or your music to check it out. So don't overlook the importance of bios. Let me share a few pet peeves that I have with artist bios, because I've seen many of them. I've written many of them, but I've seen a lot, and some are very impressive. Others have some major flaws in my mind. One of the key flaws that I see to a lot of artist bios is a tendency on the part of some artists to think of their bio as a resume and to be overly comprehensive and just really detailed well beyond where they need to be. Again, brevity is important. Just as songwriters try to convey a story in as few words as possible in a song, you should look at bios in the same way. Even the longer bios need not be pages long. They can be a few paragraphs long. Too many artist bios are written in the first person. They use boring language and they're replete with errors. As Annie mentioned before, grammar usage is important. And like Annie, I'm really a stickler for good grammar and spelling. And in fact, I'm a self-professed, self-diagnosed comachondriac. I see commas used incorrectly all the time. And you may think that's not important, but to a good journalist, it is. And so is writing these bios and other materials in what's known as the AP style, AP being the acronym for Associated Press, which is what most journalists follow that style. And that includes writing in the third person. And I know it's hard when you're writing about yourself to do that, but you have to, or you have to have somebody, whether it's a publicist or a writer friend of yours, or just somebody you trust to run whatever you write by, or to help you in crafting your bios. Think objectively when writing your bios, and use adjectives and superlatives very sparingly. And even then, only when they're attributable to others. You shouldn't be writing about yourself or having your publicist write about yourself in a bio that you are the best at this. And I really would steer clear of words like unique, unless better to describe what it is that makes you unique than to just say that you're unique. And if someone is saying that, it should be coming from somebody else, as I said, not from you. And if you get a folk DJ or a reviewer or somebody, another artist of some who's well known, says something nice about you, and it just says you're the best this or you're unique at this, you can perhaps go back to them and ask them, tell them you love that and you'd like to use that, but what is it about me that you thought was unique, or that you thought made me the best, or whatever it might be. A lot of artists' bios highlight who they've opened for. To me, that's largely irrelevant. Unless you have been invited by an artist to join them on a tour and to open for them in various places, I would steer clear of that, because nobody knows why it is you're opening for someone. It may be because you're a local artist and the venue knows you. The artist may not, the primary artist may not know who you are at all, but also because it takes away from you. And the time that you're spending and that people are spending reading about all the people that you open for can be better spent reading about who you are, what your music is like, what you're all about. Don't allow your bios to become stale. Keep them up to date. Refresh them with new awards and accolades and new albums. I'm also a presenter on Long Island, and I can't tell you how many times I've gone through artists' websites after we've booked them, sometimes before we've booked them, to check out their bios to be able to promote them, and seen that there were things in there with bios that made it pretty clear that it looked like they hadn't done anything in like a decade or more. And then the photos that accompanied, that were also on the website, showed these people at much younger ages than they were. That's not helpful. You want to try to keep things as up to date as possible. A lot of artists tend to view their bio and copy promoting their latest album interchangeably. And unfortunately, some publicists are the same way, in my view. Your bio is not in and of itself the promo for your album, but neither is the copy about your album, your latest album, the promo for you. Your bio should include mention of your latest album, perhaps prominently, but might also include the fact that you've put out 5 albums or whatever it is, and that your first album won this award and you were named a Kerrville New Folk winner, or this, that, and the other thing. The bio is about you, whereas a album one sheet is about the album, and they contain a short bio as part of it. There is a difference, and you got to remember those two. Let me quickly just say a couple of things about EPKs, because bios are a vital part, but not the only part of electronic press kits, which I increasingly refer to as electronic press and presenters kits, since more often than not, it is the presenters rather than you who may be reaching out to the local media to promote shows that you're appearing at, except in the instance when you're also using the bios and your EPKs to contact reviewers and others about your new CD. EPKs, aside from bios, should include several good, high-quality photos, both high-res and low-res, vertical and horizontal, so that you're giving people choices. And importantly, if you play one or more instruments, at least a couple of those photos should include you playing those instruments. I can't tell you how many artists' websites I've visited that don't contain that of people who are multi-instrumentalists, and all the photos that appear on the website are headshots or just glamour type poses or things like that that don't even include their instruments. You wouldn't know that they were a musician. So do make sure to include your instruments in your photos. Your EPK should also include links to videos, perhaps several audio links as well. All of that should also be of good quality. And importantly, contact information for you or your publicist or your agent and or your manager. And I say that because a lot of artists' websites, all they have in terms of for contact information is a fill in the blank form for someone else to contact you to ask for that, to get that information. Most music journalists are not going to do that. So make it easier on them and include your contact information right there in your EPK. And the EPK can be a section, and should be a section on your website that enables you to also have a separate link to that EPK section that you can send out to reviewers, to music journalists and others as a link to that section of your website, and or can send out as a PDF with everything contained right in one place. So it's a one-stop shop for them. It's one thing to have photos and have a photo gallery section on your website. It's another to have photos that are for media use in an electronic press kit. Similarly, your bio may appear elsewhere on your website, or a version of it might appear elsewhere on your website, but it should be included in the EPK section as well. That's it for now. Awesome.
Thank you, Michael. That was very informative. And last but certainly not least, we have coming up the bestest. We got for you the bestest. One of the bestest panelists we have today, and an awesome personage from the Ann Arbor area, and a great artisan of musical entertainment. Anyhow, Annie Capps, take it away.
Annie Capps. Annie Bacon.
Oh
Hey! Yeah, I was going to
There
say.
you go. There you go. I was nervous because Annie Capps is the other bestest artisan type.
I know. I was going to say, oh, he
You're gonna
gave.
piss
That's
her
what I was
off.
thinking. I was like, he's giving Annie Capps.
I was trying to get the most grammatical mistakes I could in one statement. I don't know. Anyhow, thank you, Annie Bacon.
Did you? You might not have seen the hair coming up on the back of my neck there. I'm going to share my screen for mine because I know that we don't all process things just by hearing it. So I'm basically I'm gonna be speaking, but also kind of reading from this as a way of just giving people who are more visual something to follow along with here. So, okay. So I have been taking copious notes of what everybody else said. This is just incredible how much is being shared. And I'm learning a lot. And yes, I was like looking at my own CD while that was going on. I passed some of those tests, but not all of them. So for those of us who are doing this kind of on our own, can't afford the publicist, or for any other reason aren't doing that, these are some tips and tricks. Some of this has been covered. Some of this might be new. And it certainly isn't exhaustive, as you've learned. There's so much to all of this. But I'm just going to dive in. So the first is, you've heard everybody say, have compassion. So the thing I could not believe was when I got my first staff writer email and I started getting 200-300 emails every single day, 7 days a week. And it is so overwhelming. So just have compassion for the journalists, that they are not trying to ignore you. In almost every case, there's so much stuff coming in. So many of the emails that I got as a writer literally just said, we have a new album. Hey, we've got a new album. Check it out. And there's absolutely, when there's so much coming to me, there's nothing about that is interesting to me. Every single other person in my inbox that day has an album. So it's important to know the story that you're trying to tell. So you want to keep it brief in that initial email when you're reaching out, but don't just say we've got a new album. Come up with a compelling couple of sentences about why the release matters. Why does it matter to you? Why does it matter to anyone else? Put the sort of angle into it. Like, what does it mean? And then, similar to what Michael was saying about having a shorter bio and a longer bio, you can take a similar approach with press releases. Now, everybody you reach out to, every journalist has a different sort of what they prefer. So none of this is going to apply to everybody, but a lot of people that I have worked with, and myself included, prefer to have a brief email that links to the longer story. So hook me in that short first message, and then link me to where I can read the full narrative of your new album. So the other really important thing is not to pester people. Send your email, your press release, follow up a week later, but don't email again about the same release. Don't just keep saying the same thing over and over until you have something new to say about it. So maybe you have a new video, a remix, or a performance that is relevant to their coverage, which I'll get into in a minute. You can continue to follow up about the same release if you have something new to say about it, but you don't want to pester the journalists. So here we go. Okay, so this gets into this really important part of building a press list. Now, a lot of people might find this to be really daunting, but that's okay. Of course, the sun came out right as I started speaking. Let me see if that helps a little. Okay. You can start with the stuff that you know and just add as you go. I'm going to give you some ideas of how to build that database here. You can buy databases as well, media database. I'm not sure how much they cost because I've just been building mine through the years. But you really want to have an existing spreadsheet of outlets that you're reaching out to and have organized and have information about, that you get to know, that you understand what they're doing, so that when you have new releases that come out, you're not having to reinvent the wheel every time. So one of the really important parts of that is sort of labeling the different outlets that you're reaching out to. You're going to have some that are local, some that are music, and some that are lifestyle. So I'll explain these. So a local outlet is going to be anybody that's covering their own local area, right? So this is like the Metro Times is a great example. And it's not necessarily local to you. It's local to places that are important to you and that you have some connection to. So somewhere you're going to tour, somewhere you have lived, your hometown, somewhere you have a cultural connection to of any kind. These are really important for when you're touring. These are really important for being able to get people out to shows and to see you. That's the great value of those. So the music category, this is people who just sort of generally cover music. So acoustic music scene, that would be considered a music outlet, right? Because they're generally, regardless of geographic location, they're covering artists from all over. And for these outlets, it's really important to get to know the writer's taste. So if there's an outlet that you really, really want to have a piece in, like Rolling Stone or Folk Radio UK, read their blog, read their magazine, read their newspaper, get to know the writers so that then you can reach out to the person who's most likely to be interested in the music that you're making. And this stuff takes time. So when you hire a publicist, this is what you're paying for. You're paying for their deep knowledge of all of these outlets and the relationships that they have with people at those outlets. So just to let you know, a place like Rolling Stone, I've never been able to get in touch with them on my own. I got coverage from them one time when I did have a publicist, and that person had that relationship and had cultivated it for years and years and years. So that's really what you're paying for. So if you don't have the money, you just have to do that work yourself. And luckily, we're all musicians and we love music and we're obsessed in so many ways. So it isn't really, I don't think, too much of a burden on us to say that for our homework we have to read more about music. So I always found that a really enjoyable part of the process. And this is one that a lot of people don't think about, but this one is the lifestyle angle. You are not only your music, there's more to you. As I say here, any other cultural, religious, or lifestyle connection that you have presents an opportunity to share your musical story with a new audience. So, for example, let's say you are diabetic and you want to pitch to the diabetic magazine what it's like to tour when you're diabetic and how you eat when you're on tour. Or let's say you have an anthropology degree and you want to reach out to there's a magazine called Sapiens that's really interested in bringing anthropology to a more modern and wide base of people. And you're like, oh, songwriting is really anthropology in, sort of contemporary anthropological research. So great, pitch that. You have expertise in these two places, bring it together and bring your music into another avenue. And the great thing about that is it's really like it's a whole new audience for your music. And so you're not competing for people's musical attention in that case. So that is a really great avenue. So yeah, so you build out your press list and just kind of categorize, tag them, however you want to do it. For me, it's all about Google Sheets. I love my spreadsheets. Contact information, what kind of music that they do, what their styles are in terms of what they, how they want you to reach out to them. Some people want you to reach out and send a CD. Some people want you to use Submit Hub. Some people you have to apply on their website. So when you build your press list, you're building your own capacity to do this at scale, to reach out. So for my last album in 2019, I probably sent out, I probably for each single and then the album sent about 150 emails, and then, follow-ups, of course. But those were different audiences, and I didn't have to just completely create it each time. I sorted based on, okay, this single is doing this, and this is the kind of outlets that I'm looking for. So, and then just to let you know, for those 600 or so emails that I sent, I got 10 stories written. So it's a numbers game. You have to really just like be in it and not take the silence as rejection, because it's not, and just stick with it. That does get to this really important one of only sending relevant materials to journalists. So once you know that somebody is like a local Ann Arbor magazine, don't send them your information about touring to Kansas, because they don't care and that's not important to them. And you're sort of breaking the trust with that journalist. So send them things that are relevant to them, show them that you've done some homework, that you know what's important to them. And this one's really important too, to make sure when you do get coverage that you thank the writer and that you share the coverage. So when you thank them publicly on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, wherever your social media world is, in your newsletter, things like that, you're sort of creating a mutual beneficial situation. So if the publication sees that there was a huge spike in their, and in who was coming to their website to see your piece, that's that feels really good to them, and that's gonna make an impression. But also, it's just the nice thing to do that people have taken their time to listen to your music, to think about your music, to pull it out of this pile of thousands of emails, and to really put their energy into it. It's just the nice thing to do, to make sure you say thank you. And then, as I was saying, there's definitely a point at which you really need a publicist who has these relationships. But there are a lot of people out there who will take your $500 a month or your $300 a month, and you will be one of 50 or 100 clients that they have, and they've got one or two people working. They are not going to be able to do anything more for you than what you can do for yourself. So I hate to say this because I don't want to, I know that those people work really hard as well, but it's not worth your money. And so when you're ready to upgrade, you really want to work with an agency that has time for you. And what that means might look different under lots of different scenarios, so I don't want to prescribe what that looks like. But in my experience, the staff-client ratio is about one staff member to at most 10 clients. which has run anywhere from about $1,000 to $3,000 a month for like, they usually have a, 3 to 6 month minimum in my experience. So, okay, so that was a lot of information. I do have this in a handout as well, so you can all look at that, and I'll stop sharing. And there we go.
Right. Thank you, Annie Bacon. Thank you, Annie Caps, too, in the background there. That was all. That was, I don't know, this is pretty fascinating. What I really like is that each of our 4 folks today kind of have a different slant on things, right? We've got an Amazon reviewer who likes the physical copy. John Sinkevics is doing this all the time. Michael Kornfeld. Anyhow, we learned something different from each of these folks, and that's really what we were hoping for today. If you have questions, put them in the chat to either everyone or Annie Caps or me. Annie's going to send me a whole bunch of questions that have been piling up. I'm going to start with a question from Bruce Swan, and I think I'll let Syncovix take this, and then everybody else can jump in if they want. But is there something that an artist can put in the subject line that gets the necessary attention for you to open it if you don't know them already? And then how many times should an artist recontact a reviewer or journalist before you realize that they're not for you, or you're not for them, or it's not going to happen, and you don't want to be overly rude?
Well, first off, I have to say that what Michael and Annie pointed out is incredibly valuable information for someone who is inundated, as we all are as journalists. Some of Michael's comments, I was nodding my head several times about the bios and the way they do things. And I do also think that a couple of different versions of your bio are really important. In fact, we here at Local Spins do write bios for artists at times. And that's one of the things that we recommend, is because you never know how you're going to use these, whether they're going to be used in social media and real short, or they're going to be used in a longer fashion on your website. I would have to say that when I'm looking at my emails, I'm sort of a combo between what Annie was talking about in terms of local news outlets and music publications. I'm unique in the sense that I cover music regionally, mostly the state of Michigan, but mostly West Michigan. So if an artist is coming through town, I want the subject line to say, artist ABC will be playing Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, or is coming to Michigan supporting a new album. That gets my attention because I suddenly realize, okay, this is an artist I at least have to figure out if it's somebody we want to cover, because I know they're going to be in this area, and I know this is something that I at least have to look at. So that's a clue there in terms of local media and how we handle things. I get a lot of national press releases sent to me about artists that are touring California and Australia, and of course that has no interest to me. And if it's an artist that I'm kind of interested in, I will look to see whether or not they're going to be coming to Michigan. I might look at their email, just a quick look, and if they're not coming to Michigan, I put it away and I don't look at it again. I would say following up once, as Annie pointed out, to an artist, if you haven't heard back. I will respond to artists, though. If there's some interest at all, I will say thank you for the information. We'll take a look. But clearly, you can't do that to everybody. And yes, if you start pestering me, it's like beating your head against the wall, because frankly, I have a lot of other artists that I need to spend time with. So yeah, I would have to say one follow-up email is plenty.
Great. Thank you, John. Michael, you want to follow up on that? And then I got a question specifically for you next.
Yeah, I share John's sentiments. And in terms of local, if you're going to be performing somewhere locally, I tend to use things like put in the date right first, like March 8th, name of the artist, where you're performing, if it's local. Or if you're doing a national tour, you can do the same thing. We put the date, because I think that's important. You want to have you want the timeliness of it. Have the date, name of the artist, and performing in Akron, performing in Cincinnati, or playing Cincinnati, whatever it might be. If it's not that, or if it's more general and you're looking to get an interview profile, or you put out a new album, that's where the idea of the one-line bio comes in, because you can only fit in a subject header that people can actually see. You can only fit a few words. So something like that, that's descriptive without being overly so, and that's not completely undescriptive by saying new album. Joe Smith releases new album, says nothing. So you want to be somewhat descriptive but concise, in what you do in terms of that. And in
Great.
terms of, I also agree with John and what Annie had said in terms of one follow-up. Anything more than that is overkill, and you may be turning off the writer or reviewer and harming future prospects too. They may just not have the space or the time for you now, but you want them to be able to consider you in the future.
Great. Okay. I've got another question to get back to you, Michael, in just a second, a bio related question. But Steve, did you have a comment on the current thread?
Yeah. I agree with multiple times, but I think the direct answer to the question that was sort of asked is, what can you put in the email that'll make me read it? My suggestion is, hi, Steve, in the subject, and then say, I've recorded some music, or I have this new CD. Basically, the one sentence opening line for your email in the subject. Because if it just says new release, so why would I want to open your email to begin with? Because I've got a whole bunch of them. And if I go to my other email address, which I haven't cleaned out in about 2 weeks, so there's about 700 mostly from the big agencies, the ones that cover all kinds of music from jazz to pop and so on. So make your point. It's like an elevator pitch. Do it in the subject. And then once you've caught my attention to open it, you could repeat it again. And then again, I will repeat that, one follow-up, because it's possible either I missed your email the first time, which is possible, although with that subject, I probably read it, or at least started to read it. And hopefully then I can usually just reply, and I hate to do form ones, but I might just say, I'm really busy. I can't do it. I hope you understand it. Understand it. When I have time, I will, but I can't promise you right now. So,
great. Thanks, Steve. A comment and a question back to Michael. Mark Smith says you need an elevator pitch length bio for advertising uses. And I think you kind of covered that, Michael. But we had some confusion about the different length bios. And do you submit them all to someone at the same time? Or do you try and send the right one to the right person at the right time, or just put them on the EPK, or what?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You have it in your EPK. You should have the varying length bios, whether it's 2 or 3, or possibly even a 4th, or the short bio could be your one-liner, and the second one could be a 1-paragraph. There's no ironclad rule. The other thing that they're used for, though, is you submit all the different versions to presenters, anywhere you're going to be performing, presenters or venues, because they have a need for it and a use for it, and they may be in touch with media and DJs and things who can use it in different ways. Plus, the presenters themselves may have different uses for it. As John mentioned before, there's the social media posts, there's the website posts. Well, presenters have social media and websites as well. They may also put out printed flyers. Imagine that. So you want to have all of them available, and importantly, all in one place. In terms of sending it out, that's where what Annie said is important. You got to know your audience, in this case, the media that you're reaching out to. If you're reaching, initially, you may just want to send out a short bio to somebody who's not familiar with you at all. Plus a link to the whole EPK section of your website. If it is someone who's already familiar with you, but you want them to know more information, or you're trying to appeal to them to do a Q&A interview with you or something, then by all means, send a longer one, or send a shorter one and let them know that a longer one appears in your EPK. A link is attached. Make it as easy as possible for them. Don't have to drive them, say, go visit my website and search for the EPK there. Send it to them as a direct link.
Great,
one addition I would like to make, and that is, do your homework. I think Annie pointed this out as well, but know the publications that you are sending to, or the TV station, or whatever it is. Know who you're sending to, because that's going to solve a lot of your problems, and it's going to determine quite often whether or not you send a longer bio or information about what you're doing. I tell my writers when they're first starting out here, read the website, see what we're doing, and that will also sort of change and maybe alter the way in which you write and what you're doing. Know the publication that you're sending to, because that is really going to be very critical in terms of whether or not they respond to what you're asking them to do.
Yeah,
Annie, just I got one for you. I
Okay.
just want to throw in here that this all a lot of this reminds me of pet peeves and suggestions from presenters, right? When I get an email and, well, those ones from Reverb Nation, we would like to play at your venue. Yeah, okay, fine. Or we're a klezmer funk beat-based band, and we want to play at your folk venue because, well, anyhow, all similar stuff. And Annie, as you throw your 2 cents worth in here, or a whole nickel if you want, you're a star. The question came up, should the EPK be a public or a private link? Someone heard it both ways, and do you guys have any comments on that, starting with you,
I
Andy?
would love to hear what Michael says about that because I wonder about it myself. I had it posted through my management company previously, but I've stopped working with them, so I'm very curious to hear. But I do want to say really quick before we move to that um, most writers that I know do not like attachments to emails. So you're going to make it easy for them, but don't make them download stuff. So if put like host things in places where they can just click a link and get there and it's there, but they don't have to download it to their computer. So I'll defer to Michael because I want to know the answer to this too.
Again, this is another one where I don't think there's an ironclad rule. I happen to think that it's fine to be generally to be a public thing on your website, again, because it's not just for media. Today, EPKs are for presenters and for others as well, and it can be useful for people that you might not have even thought of. Annie mentioned before the idea, which I thought was a brilliant idea, about talking about lifestyle and not just thinking in terms of your music, in terms of music and reaching out necessarily to music media. You can reach out to, if you have songs or you have dedicated your album to an environmental cause, you can reach out to environmental groups and environmental publications. If you're doing social justice songs, there are social justice groups and social justice organizations. You might even consider partnering with one of them. And therefore, you may not have, quote, the money, the funds to have a publicist, but maybe they do, or maybe combined you do. And you help a cause that is worthwhile and meaningful to you. And at the same time, it's helping get your name out there. So there are different reasons for doing it, but that's a primary reason why I would tend to be public. But if it is going to be public facing on your website, then make sure that the information that's in there is stuff that you don't mind the general public knowing. If you were going to put it in the EPK, you're not putting it in an EPK for the media and for presenters with a note saying, please don't use this. So I'd imagine you would think that it's fine for people and you want people to know about it. But again, just do it, whatever you do it in a professional manner.
I would.
Something really helpful for. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, go ahead, Annie.
I am 100% public. Let me tell you, because I am not just using an EPK for doing an interview or a story about a band. I've got a concert calendar. I've got a newsletter that I put out where I'm trying to let people know that there's shows coming to town. And if I can get to a website and I can download a photo of this artist who's coming to town that I might not necessarily be interviewing or doing a full story about, I've got that available. I actually dislike it when publicists hide that information, and I have to try to figure out who's their publicist, and then they have to send me a link for a high-res photo. To me, that's a waste of time, and that means I probably will move to a different artist and focus on them instead.
Annie Bacon had a follow-up, and then Annie Caps has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say in that case, for if you were going to have phone numbers for contact information or anything like that, I just want to encourage people to use Google Voice as a resource, because you can get a phone number for free and without having to give out your personal phone number.
So sorry, my question is sort of a follow-up with Ken's thing, because it's not really a question, but so I created for my album a private, for media only, like Dropbox folder with all the downloads. And that's not something I'm going to let the public have, because I want the public to pay for it, right? So there's a difference between like an EPK that's out there and that's got all the stuff that you don't want to have to try and chase down privately. But if you're sending out like, previews of your album or stuff for media only that is not necessarily for general consumption, what kind of, I don't know if that's what Ken was talking about, but
yeah, that is separate and apart from an EPK.
What kind of stuff would you want in that? That would be like feel private, like that's the one sheets, the music, the full downloads, all that kind of stuff, right? Just pretty much anything and everything. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Annie Caps. I think we're getting close to wrapping up because we kind of go for 3 to 3:30. But a couple of comments here for the general audience. Carol Oberto-Bessing, who runs the awesome Woodstock, Ohio Folk Festival, seconds what you guys have been saying, that your EPK, your press kit, is not only going to be used by media. Presenters such as herself count on that information also for decisions and also for promoting artists that come perform for them. So you want it to be everything these folks said, but kind of general purpose and available on your website or sent to presenters and so on and so forth. Liz Storm is on board here, our friendly neighborhood Michigan music industry lawyer of sorts. She says a friendly reminder to give proper songwriting and artist credit, and the little C in a circle with the year and the author name. And last thing, specifically for Steve Ramm, this is last thing for now, specifically for Steve Ramm, you mentioned that you don't like, you had negative things to say about MailChimp emails. And I don't know if you were specifically on, that program, or it's a type of mass email, but somebody was wondering what it is about that specifically that you don't like.
What I'm seeing from that is, I think that, and maybe I just get MailChimp from association I belong to, and that's fine. But again, if I go to my separate AOL account I have for press people, and I'm seeing from an agency, and I'll name Saxco for one. If I go in today, I probably got 15 from different PR people there, and then yesterday there were another 20, and they all sort of look the same. And if I sort down there, I don't know that they're hitting the right genre. So again, as long as you can, in my case, the ideal situation, have my name in the subject. Because with MailChimp, you can do the same press release to everybody and just insert the person's first name. Sometimes it'll come across as Stephen. And I know if it says Stephen, which only my mother used to call me, then I know that somebody just copied it from some email address. So yeah, it's not a MailChimp thing. I think it still comes back to, how do you get the person to read the mail that comes? Assuming I've, getting 100 emails a day, and I don't know, how many John gets, and, whatever there. So
great.
Hope that helps.
Yeah. Another question, a two-parter, and let's try John Sinkevics for the second part. But the first part, we'll do, John, take care of both of them if you can, then we'll get other comments. Is there a specific platform for download type stuff that is easier to work with? SoundCloud, Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever. And then secondly, if there's an event such as we're coming to Grand Rapids on March 8th or something, like you said, how far ahead of that, or an album release, how far ahead of that should someone contact you before it's, way too early, like, hey, we're coming to Grand Rapids in 2023, or too late?
Well, yeah, that I would have to say about 2 weeks ahead of time is fine. Now it depends on the publication. I mean, let's face it, if you're contacting Review Magazine here in Grand Rapids, which covers a lot of different territory, including music, it's got to be a couple of months ahead of time because they're a monthly. Same thing with some of the weekly publications. For me as a website, of course, I can turn things around pretty quickly. If I get an email from someone 2 months from now, it's too soon, because I'm concentrating on, about a 2 week, 3 week time period where I'm scheduling things. So it really depends on your market and your media outlet. And that's why you need to do your research as to what the media outlet is most likely to want. And I would have to say too, the first part of the question was again?
Is platforms that you can use for downloads and stuff, SoundCloud versus Dropbox versus Google Drive or whatever?
I prefer like Dropbox, Google Drive. Nothing, it's all fine. SoundCloud is great if I'm just going to be listening to a track or something. But I also do a radio show. So if I'm doing a radio show and it's a regional act and I want to have the MP3 for it, I really need to be able to download an MP3 that I can use for my radio show when I'm producing it. But, frankly, that doesn't matter. I would prefer in a press release when you're just first introducing yourself, I just want a link. I don't want to download anything. And I think Annie pointed that out as well, that, you know, it's best for us journalists not having to deal with attachments of any kind. If you want to link to your music, SoundCloud, that's great. Spotify, it's all fine. And then beyond that, if I want to request information, request an MP3, request a download, then you can give me the link or the private link, or however you want to send it to me is fine.
Great. Well, thank you, John, and everybody. You know, thanks to all y'all for being here today. Our 4 awesome presenters, panelists, Annie Caps in the background, and also all of you that came to listen and ask questions and so on and so forth. This is great. We try to wrap up between 3 and 3:30, and we're closer to 3:30 now. So I don't see any more questions. I don't see any hands raised. The commercial just showed up on the chat. You've got access to the one sheets and everybody's email, but more importantly, farm, we're busy as bees. This Tech Tuesday thing, not that this was so much tech, but close enough. We do once a month, right? So every second Tuesday, right, Annie? Second Tuesday, nod your head, yep. Every second Tuesday, we're here at 2 p.m. You should be here also, because it's always fun and interesting. I mean, all right, these 4 folks are better than most, but it's always fun and interesting. Also, we do all kinds of, we call it Farm Virtual Connections. We got like an open mic performance lane on the 4th Thursday. We got peer groups. We got just all this awesome stuff going on. Farmfolk.org. You can hear all about it, so I don't have to babble about it anymore because I'll screw something up. The other thing is, we're going to do an in-person conference. We're going to do an in-person conference. You're going to be there. We're going to do an in-person conference. Y'all are going to be there. It's going to be awesome. We're not going to get sick. We're going to have fun, just like, what was that, back in the 1880s? Did that when we last did that? I don't know. Anyhow, I feel like we were innocent children once upon a time when we did this without even thinking about it, didn't have to cross our fingers and say, can we do this? Anyhow, it's in October, farmfolk.org. You can register now. Pretty soon we'll start taking submissions for official showcase artists. So I know Annie Bacon's going to send us the first one. And
I've got it marked on my calendar already. Next week.
And it's all on the website. And even better than the website is if you go there to it's either about or contact page, and you sign up for our newsletters if you're not already, because then you don't have to remember to go to the website. We'll send you newsletters. They have awesome subject lines to get your attention. Annie Caps uses everything she learned from these guys. She already knows all this shit. She's been doing it for a long time. So anyhow, Annie Bacon, John Sinkevics, Steve Ramm, Michael Kornfeld, thank you so much for being here today. We all appreciate it. And thank everybody else for being here today. Annie Caps, I know I forgot something. What else do we need to wrap up?
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to open up the chat for one last, if y'all want to throw in, I opened up the chat for everybody now. You can throw your kudos in there so I don't have to copy and paste it. And you got it, Smitty Smith, everybody. Great job, Smitty. This was super fun, everybody. And this is the awful part where I'm going to go, well, it's a good part because I'm going to go to gallery view, which means the Facebook and YouTube clan is going to see everybody's face. If you don't want your face shown, now's the time to mute your video camera. But then we're going to have the abrupt farewell, which we all hate so much. So I personally would like to thank our panelists today. This was really great. And Smitty and Charlie Mossbrook, who is taking over virtual connections and making this thing run so smoothly. I have other things to do. Come to the conference. Register now. Everybody, thank you so much. I hate this part, but everybody wave bye-bye now. It's so good to see you. Okay.